Well, two people whose positions on fracking are hopelessly irreconcilable are Nick Greeley, an energy consultant and shale gas evangelist, and Caroline Lucas, the Green Party's leader and only Member of Parliament. What would the exploitation of gas accessible only by fracking in this country do to the price of gas?
Well, certainly I estimate that it would drop it at least by half by 2020.
So we'll be paying half what we now pay for gas?
That is correct, with the resultant effect on industry and, of course, on electricity prices.
Do you have any evidence to support that claim?
Well, certainly we're talking about supply and demand here. And they said in there was 150 BCM. That is an outdated figure that the British Geological Survey is changing. This is not one North Sea, this is several North Seas worth of natural gas. It is transforming world energy markets, and it will do the same in Lancashire.
So you don't dispute that if there's a greater... Oh, really?
I dispute the issue of the cost saving that Nick has just put forward, because if you look at what someone like Deutsche Bank says, who are fairly hard-headed economists, they would say that actually in the UK context, the chances are that shale gas won't actually reduce the price of gas significantly at all, because we're far more densely populated than the US. At the moment, the US is the only place that's commercially exploiting shale gas.
And it has cut gas prices there, hasn't it?
In the US it has, but what Deutsche Bank says is that it's very unlikely to do that to anything like that extent in the UK, because we're far more densely populated. It's going to take us far longer to get agreement to go ahead with mining.
Why don't you let them take the commercial risk?
Well, I just want us to have some facts on the table. So let's look at what Deutsche Bank's saying about the cost, but also let's look about the pollution side of it as well. Because my worry is when Nick excitedly says that there's several North Seas worth of gas, the truth is that even if we were to exploit just 20% of the licensed area in Lancashire, we would use up to 15% of our CO2 budget to 2050. In other words, if we're serious about reducing our climate emissions, we simply can't afford to exploit anything like that amount of gas.
When you see pictures of people switching on their taps and setting fire to the water, you do rather tend to think, don't you?
Well, it is a very emotional, but if I would explain...
Of course it's emotional. You want to have a wash and you're on fire. Of course it's emotional.
No, that has absolutely no connection to fracking at all.
You're certain of that, are you?
Absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt.
It is impossible that that was caused by fracking.
That is correct. That has been proved many, many times.
Or asserted many times.
No, even proven. I mean, for example, if anybody would just go to Google News and do a search for water on fire, you will see in Google News North American newspapers going back to the 1930s, 40s and 50s with taps on fire.
I don't think we should get too diverted by that particular image. It was a very shocking image, but actually there's plenty of other very shocking issues around shale gas, partly around the links to water contamination through the chemicals that are being used, but also the fact that the first dash for gas that we had was not a bad thing. It replaced coal. This new dash for gas is likely to be displacing renewable energy and energy efficiency, and that's the real tragedy. Yeah,
OK, that's a political point of view. You think that all fossil fuel energy should eventually be replaced by energy from renewable sources.
Eventually, but if we accept the fact that we're going to need some gas as a transitional fuel, don't use shale gas because it's far more carbon intensive than conventional gas.
Would you accept it if you were satisfied that it was properly regulated, the exploitation, the way the thing works, the safety precautions, and the rest of it?
It would certainly be a lot better than it is at the moment, but I still don't think it would be the right way forward for the reason that I've just said, that it is far more carbon intensive. It will contribute far more to CO2 emissions than if we can continue with conventional gas.
Here in the real world, we're in the middle of an economic crisis.
But we're saying that this gas is going to be more expensive, potentially, than conventional gas, and we're saying that it's more carbon intensive. It's a bit of a no-brainer to say we don't want to do this.
If they want to take the risk, the commercial risk, who are you to stop them?
Because it's not just a commercial risk, it's an environmental risk, and it's locking us into a fossil fuel structure in our energy supplies at exactly the time we need to be moving out from it.
That's an ideological point.
If you want to go ideological, I think it's around how we actually meet our climate change objectives, which have been agreed by the government. We have a Climate Change Act that tells us we need to reduce our CO2 emissions by 80% by 2050. We will not do it if we go down the shale gas route.
Okay, let's park that, and let's park also the question of commercial risk. If an energy company decides that it wants to try to exploit this resource, is there any way in your judgment it can be properly and safely regulated?
I think the jury is out on that, not least because if we're serious about making this a significant percentage of our energy supply, we might need 3,000 wells just to produce around 10% of our gas supplies. The amount of regulatory time it would take to properly check that all of those 3,000 wells were working properly would be immense.
Well, this can create a huge amount of wealth for the nation, which will be taxed in this nation and not exported to the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund or to fund the royal family of Qatar. There will be plenty of money to pay for teachers, nurses, doctors, and HSE inspectors and regulators. This is the best news for the economy and for the environment, because the true dismal science has been energy.
All right. Okay, thank you both very much.